with tidbits from the Word. We're going to look today in Galatians chapter 5. Paul talking to a church in Pontus, Galatia that they had started. And these people had started, and somebody else had come along and troubled these people with some of the old things of the law. That would be like you or I being in a particular work or a church or somewhere, and somebody from another group of believers who believe a little different than we do, or haven't come to the place to where they really understand all of the Scripture, come and tell us we need to back up and do some of the works that they're doing in order to achieve the righteousness of God. When that's not, in fact, the truth. The truth of the matter is that love covereth a multitude of sins, and love is the thing that is going to be. He talks in here in Galatians, the book of Galatians, about if a brother, you have a brother in the Lord, he got saved, he was an alcoholic, or he was a thief, or he was something else, just like I was. I was both, an alcoholic and a thief, before I got saved. What would it have been in my young life when I first got saved, had I gone out, and the Lord blessed me that I didn't do this, but if I had gone out and got drunk one weekend after getting saved, that did not make me get lost. That gave me a knife in the heart that I did something against the very God that saved me from such a thing. But what is the obligation of the church in love? What is the obligation of those around me who are my brothers and sisters in the Lord now? Their obligation and my obligation is to go to that one and say, hey bro, that's behind you now. It's behind you now. God forgave you, I forgive you, and everybody forgives you. Come on back, get in here. Don't let that keep you from coming to the church house. Don't let one failure keep you from coming to the church house. That's what love, the love of the Spirit is. He said, stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ had made us free, and be not entangled again with a yoke of bondage. Now, how do you get entangled with a yoke of bondage after you get free? When the Lord saved me in 1972 at 3 o'clock in the morning out on the country club road here, and I wrecked my car. I was drunk. I got out. I looked up to heaven. I said, God, I'm a sinner. Forgive me of my sin. Come into my heart and save my soul. At that very moment, I was taken out from the bondage of the world, the bondage that was on me of the world. I was taken out of that. I no longer lived under that bondage. By the way, from that day to this, I've never took another drink, nor swore another cuss word. And I used to swear bad. But listen, then I went to a church full of people. And I joined that church. I got baptized. And people loved me. And in spite of the fact I was a new Christian, I'm sure I did things that a lot of people said, wow, he's still smoking. And I was. I smoked for a whole year after I was saved. Not that smoking will carry you to hell. It may get you to heaven quicker than many other people. But the thing about it is, it's one of the things of the world, and it's not good to maintain the things of the world after you're saved. So, this steadfastness is going to come through growth. You can't be steadfast until you grow. For instance, I have been through my life a paint contractor. Was I always a good paint contractor? In my mind, I was, but in the mind of others, I wasn't. Because when I was young and learning how to paint, I went to a company one time and hired on, and I told them I'm a painter. And they said, you are. All I'd ever done is paint houses for myself. I never painted around a crew before. I had no idea how a paint crew worked. But I sure learned quick. And did I get mocked? They said to me, thought you were a painter. I said, I am. They said, well, you don't even know how to hold your brush. You don't know how to dip in the bucket. You don't know what... I remember, I'll never forget Thomas MacDonald, a friend of mine now. He's gone to heaven, I hope. But he told me, he said, do you know what that molding up there at the ceiling is? And I said, yeah, it's the high molding up there. And he said, that is called a crown mold. And you know what that molding down at the base is? And that's called a base mold. And you know what that casing right there around that door is? And I said, what is it, Brother Thomas, or Mr. Thomas? And he said, it's a door casing. And the casing around the window is a window casing. So we have to learn, when we get in the Bible, when we first get saved and we start getting in the Bible, we have to learn. The first thing we learn, perhaps, is there are 66 books in the Bible. 39 in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament. We learn these things. Now, people that love are not going to ridicule you because you don't know how to open the Bible. When they see you're a new believer, they're going to help you. They're going to reach over there when you're trying to flip through, you're trying to find something in the Bible, the last book of the Bible, Old Testament, Habakkuk. You got no idea. It's just before Matthew, but you're looking, and somebody will reach over there and flip it open for you. And love. And you don't get ridiculed because you're learning. And that's the thing. We need to be careful, my friend, if we're saved, we win somebody to the Lord, or they get saved, to bring them in and entangle them in the verses. Now, there are verses in Galatians that are very misunderstood by some people, because the Galatians misunderstood what was told them by somebody else. Do you remember before the New Testament, there was a law that a man had to be circumcised on the 8th day in order to follow the Jewish tradition? Well, what's happened here is, here's the church of Galatia, and here is a man, he came along, he's 30 years old. He's never been circumcised, and he's joining the church in Galatia. And somebody comes along and says, well, if he ain't circumcised, he can't be part of this church. Not so. He can be part of that church. There is no barrier after Jesus went to the cross. There was no more legal barrier for a man to not be a Christian. He could be a Christian whether he was circumcised or not. He could join that church. He could be part of that church. And by the way, that was a private matter in the first place. And who in the world dug it up and said, this is a private part of a man that is not seen? If the man didn't tell him whether he was circumcised or not, what difference did it make? Until they found out he wasn't circumcised, and if by some stroke of luck they found out he wasn't circumcised, and then they said, well, because you're not, you can't be part of us. And that was a problem they had here in this little church. And we need to be careful, folks. I don't know what kind of church you belong to. I don't know where you are, but I've been around churches. I lived in a town when I was a young man that had Nazarene churches that said if you smoked, you could not belong to their church. Said if you smoked, you were going to die and go to hell. And that was their belief there at that time. I don't know how the Nazarenes believe today, but in that day, that's how they believed. They believed in total separation from some of the things of the world. Otherwise, you were living in total sin, and it negated the fact that God saved you and you were going to die and go to hell. That was it. So that's not love, by the way. That's judgment. That is not love. So if we're going to go by love, we got to go look at this. Verse 13 of chapter 5 said, brethren, ye have been called unto liberty. Only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. Because you have this liberty, don't take liberty in the flesh to do things. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. But if ye bite and devour one another, take heed that ye be not consumed one of another. My goodness, since I've been saved, I have heard of more churches with divisive problems, all the way from the pulpit to the pew, from the back door to the front door, of people looking at other people, talking about other people for the things that they're doing, and they boiled it down to things rather than to spiritual things. They boiled it down to physical things rather than spiritual things. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Verse 16 of Galatians chapter 5. Verse 17, for the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, for that ye cannot do the things that you would. But if you be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law, or under the flesh, the law of the flesh. Now, you can be separated from the law of the flesh. These verses are much misunderstood by a lot of people because they haven't found out yet or realized yet that where the warfare is supposed to be is not with one another, but with each individual with his own self, with his own flesh, her own flesh, and her own spirit and his own spirit. If you're looking at what somebody else is doing in the church, you're not looking at yourself properly. If you see somebody doing something you would not do in the church, you can weigh that in the sense, how can I help them to see what the Lord showed me? You have to do that with love. You don't castrate the person because of their not unknowledged, because they don't have the knowledge that you have. Why? If you've been saved a good while and you're in the church, you have to be careful. Your spiritual knowledge is above that of many that are coming in. It may be above that of many that are older than you, been sitting there longer than you, and you've got to rightly divide this word. Be careful. Don't cut people asunder because of what you see. You become a victim of the flesh, and it's hopeless and helpless and destitution to try to live spiritually in the flesh. Yes, I'm in the flesh, but I have to allow the Spirit of God in the center of my mind, in my frontal lobe, the Spirit of God to rule my flesh and live through the Spirit. Otherwise, I would be, instead of being a servant of God, I'd be a judge for God. And I'd be judging people and throwing them out. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to love other folks. You say, well, so-and-so, she's a gossip. Well, help her out. Help her out. Say, listen, do you know that you really hurt so-and-so last week when I heard that you said this about them? Did you say that? If they say, yes, they did, say, look, do you know that you really hurt them? That hurt them drastically. It might even make them get out of the church. It might make them fall away by the side. That doesn't make them lost. It just makes them detached from the fellowship that they could have. Be very careful how you use your tongue. If anybody's fallen from grace and you can restore them, restore that one back. Restore that one. Help them out. Don't castrate them. Help them out. Help them out. Look, he said, now the works of the flesh are manifested, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have told you in times past. This is verse 20 of chapter 5 in Galatians. I have told you in times past that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Now what he's saying, we have some in the church who have got some of one or two or maybe some of these problems. These are fleshly problems. They need to look and see those and get rid of them. Now that you're saved, you're no longer in the flesh to do these fleshly things. These are all things that you did before you were saved. Well, you say, Brother Peter, I didn't do those things before I was saved. I was a real good fellow. Well, Jesus didn't come to save good folks. He came to save those that were lost and the bad folks. And if the Bible said if you looked on a woman to lust after her, you committed adultery already. So therefore you do fit this place. He said, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Are you working on those? Are you working on those? Have you been hot-headed in times past? I was so hot-headed before I got saved. If I had a flat tire, I might get out and take the tire iron and break the windshield out of the car and all other windows too, just because I had a flat tire. I mean, how foolish can a man get when he gets hot-headed? He is stupid when he's hot-headed. And so we need to have all of that put behind us. Well, now if I have a flat tire, I say, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? Who is it you want me to speak to? What would you have me do from right here on out? Because I have a flat tire and you're looking at me and you know I've got this flat tire and you may allow me to have this flat tire for this reason. And I have found that since I got saved, every flat tire I ever had a good purpose. Had a good purpose. Every time I've had a little bobble in the road has been for good purpose. I have been held up somewhere for a matter of minutes, even an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then left out. And the first stop I made, God said, this is why I had you come at this time. Because this person's here, I want you to talk to him. Wow. Had that happen just this week. Went out and had some good visits at the gas station, at the store, at the place, and I was a couple hours later than I had planned on going, but it was all in God's timing. All in God's timing. And they that care, and they that are Christ, have crucified the flesh with the affections and the lust. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let me tell you something, folks. Walking in the Spirit is a practice. It's a practice. We have to practice that. We have to say, God, you guide my steps today. And you need to say it in the morning. You need to say it in the morning. When you say the Lord's Prayer in the morning, when you get up and you say, Lord, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day, Lord, our daily bread. Forgive us, Lord, our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Wow. You just ask God to take you through the day. Now, do you think he's going to do it? Yes, he is. Do you think he's going to show you if you bobble? Yes, he is. Wow. I have walked by somebody before, and the Lord said to me, speak to them or do something. And I didn't do it. 10 minutes later, I had the grief in my heart. And I said, God, forgive me. But you know that chance may never come again. It's so important that we act. The second that we have the inkling, act on it. Can you act wrongly sometime? I might sometime, but I act foolish sometime. And the man say, what kind of nut are you anyway? I said, I'm a Christian nut. I'm screwed onto the right bolt. So, look, let us not be desired for vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. Hey, don't chide your brother and say, well, I do this and I do that. I give this, I give that, and I do that. Hey, don't chide your brother. If God's blessed you to be able to do something your other brother's not able to do, take him along with you sometime. Help him out. Show him what God has done for you the proper way. Let's look a real quick overview of let us walk in the Spirit, 5:25, what we just read. All right? Let us not desire vainglory, 5:26. That's the last verse. Let us not provoke one another, 5:26. Don't provoke your brother unless you're provoking him to good works. If you want to provoke him to good works, show him how to do those good works. But don't provoke him otherwise. Let us not envy one another. Don't envy the other person. By the way, you don't go home with the other person. You have no idea what that person has at home. Hey, that man may drive a Mercedes-Benz up to the church, or even a Jaguar. And you envy him, but you ain't going home with him. You don't know when he gets home what he's facing. He might have hell on earth at home. And so don't envy a man because of what you see. Envy a man because of what you know spiritually about the man. Envy spiritually, not physically. Let us not envy one another. Restore a sinful brother. 6:1. Look at this. Let's read it. 6:1. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye who are spiritual, restore such. Restore such. And 1. In the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. You saw my pause there. You know what my pause there was? My pause was that I see myself. I see myself can be in that same place. Or any other one. We got to be careful. We got to be careful. He said, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Man. Oh, wow. Restore a sinful brother, one that has fallen into sin. Consider thyself that you're not above falling. And by the way, if you condemn that man that fell, you have fallen. By the judgment that you make, you have fallen yourself. The judgment you make makes it you have fallen also. So therefore, do not do that. Do not do that. If a brother be taken in a sin, you have him out of that place. Bear the burdens of others. Test your own work. Look. I want a man to the Lord on Saturday night. He gets up Sunday morning. He's an alcoholic. He's been drinking all his life. He's been drinking for years. Ask the Lord to save him Saturday night. Sunday morning, I pick him up. He's already had him a beer for breakfast. Wow. You just drank a beer. You can smell it 3 miles away. I bring him into the vestibule of the church. And the whole church scatters and said, whew. Brother Peter, you smell like God this morning? I said, yeah, I brought him. Would you rather leave him at home because he drank a beer, or bring him to church where he can get under the Word and supposedly be treated good? No matter what he smells like. No matter what he just did. He drank a beer. You say, well, I think he ain't got no business being in the church. And then you go out and light a cigarette. Ain't no difference in drinking that beer, you lighting that cigarette. Hey, listen, be careful. Be careful. Restore a man, bring him in, do right. Don't do bad. Don't shun a man because he smells like he drank a beer or took a drink of liquor. He hasn't come to the place you've come to yet. But you have some things in your life that may stink worse than that in the nostrils of God. So be careful. I tell you what, a tale-bearing tongue is worse than an alcoholic Christian. A tale-bearing tongue is worse than an alcoholic Christian. At least the alcoholic Christian don't hurt nobody but himself. But a tale-bearing tongue hurts everybody around him. So be careful. Test your own work. 6:4. Let's read that. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. Can you get up in the morning knowing that you are in the arms of God? Do you wake up with the Lord on your mind? Do you wake up during the night with the Lord on your mind? Is God on your mind 24/7? Are you a help to anybody? If you're not, if the Lord's not on your mind 24/7, you're not a help to most people. Bear our own responsibilities. Listen to verse 5. For every man shall bear his own burden. bear our own burden. Don't try to bear the other man's burden. You bear your own burden and keep yourself straight, and you'll be able to help the other man. Bear your own burden. Now look at this. Test your own work, 6 and 4. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another. Listen what we need to do. We need to get close enough to God so that our rejoicing in God is a union. So we can sleep good at night. Do you sleep good at night? Do you have to take sleeping pills? Are you a Christian that is pumped full of all kinds of outside worldly medicines to be able to function in this world or to sleep good? You need to fall in love with Jesus. You need to find Jesus. Wow, I heard a preacher preach this week about, he was a young preacher too, and he couldn't find any peace. He couldn't find anything until he found Jesus. He'd already got to be a preacher. And then one day he met Jesus. And he met this scripture right here, following through with it. And he said, well, this is my problem. I've been seeking vainglory. I've been glorifying others. I've been looking at others' cars, others' houses, other people, what they're doing. But I've been looking at works. And works doesn't involve salvation. Works is not in there. Salvation is by faith, not by works. If it was by works, not everybody could get saved, because some can't work. It's by faith. Let's look on. Let's go on. We test our own work. Verse 9. Bear your own responsibility. Verse 9. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Now that's not talking about losing your salvation. That is not talking about losing your salvation. That's talking about having a loss of works. If we get out in the morning and we work until 11 o'clock and the sun gets hot and we're planting corn, and we're doing it one at a time by hand, 11 o'clock the sun gets hot, and we say, man, I'm going to the house. So we go to the house and we don't plant the rest of the corn. Do you think we're going to reap? No, we're not going to reap any harvest. You know why? Because we quit in the middle of the harvest. So you've got to stay in, even when the heat's on. You've got to stay in. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. You have a commission, I have a commission. If you're with a group of people in the household of faith, our first commission in that house is to bring the tithes and offerings to that storehouse. That is 10% of every dollar you make. 1 dime out of every dollar. 1 dime out of every dollar. You say, but Brother Peter, if I make $1,000, I got to bring a whole 100 into the church. That's right. And you know what? That's only your tithe. You have a responsibility to bring offerings in after that. That's above and beyond. So that means you need to give another $10 or $20 or something to somebody somewhere else. I carry these little tracts in my pocket. And on a weekly basis, I take dollar bills and I put them in these tracts. And I pass them out especially to anybody I do business with, for sure. A clerk or anybody, I give them an extra dollar. Look, as well as the gospel. The Bible said if you give a man the gospel and you give him for his soul and not for his body, you've done nothing. If you give him for his body and not for his soul, you've done nothing. So we got a well-rounded thing here. It's a twofold deal. Our time is nearly come and gone. We've got to go. Support the ministry. Verse 10. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. And ye see how large a letter I have written unto you with my own hand. Paul wrote this with his own hand. He wrote this letter with his own hand to this little bitty church in Galatia that he had gone over there, a little heathen town, talking with a little group of heathen people, got them saved, they started a church, and now they're on their way to doing what God would have them do. They're on their way to peace, joy, long-suffering, temperance, meekness, and a good life. And you can do the same thing. If you just got saved, find a good work, get in it. If you've been saved a while,